So there was one study in particular. I don't know if it was really a study, it's more just of a survey that the Consumer Federation of America conducts annually. What they do is they have these affiliations with all these local consumer agencies. And so every year they basically compile all the consumer complaints, and they'll look at two things. They'll look at the volume of complaints by sector, and then they'll look at sort of the magnitude of problems associated with those complaints. And so when you kind of factor both those things in, construction is like the number one worst culprit when it comes to consumer dissatisfaction. So people often will underestimate how challenging construction actually is. Just take your home, for example, right? One room in your home, right? Like a bathroom. There are structural systems there, right? That kind of house that bathroom and make it look nice. And then there's all sorts of mechanical systems that are going to allow for inflows and outflows of water, air, right? And so you have this, system of systems essentially that has to function for a long time. And you have to plug in essentially to the surrounding infrastructure. And the structure has to also integrate with the surrounding environment. So there's a lot going on that people kind of tend to underestimate. And that is so right off the bat, because of the complexity, it creates this environment that's like ripe for all sorts of ensuing market problems. Because it's complex, and because consumers generally don't know a whole lot about it, that kind of sets up all of this friction between buyer and seller of construction services, right? They don't know how to evaluate the providers of the services they want to purchase. They certainly don't know how to evaluate like the logistics associated with the project they want to undertake. They have a vision in their head, of this beautiful home, but they don't know logistically what it takes to get from that vision to the actual home. So consumers aren't in a good position to make informed decisions. They tend to go with their gut, right? They go with the architect or the general contractor that they just kind of vibe with, that they feel comfortable with. So they're making emotional decisions. Then they basically entrust everything to that one person or that one business. And that's never really, those aren't like the ingredients for a great market interaction. There's a lot of great architects and general contractors that are absolutely amazing at their craft, right? They're really good at doing the work. But they're not always great at the meta work. So the work that's required to make sure that the work is done properly. So things like project management, budget management, communication between all stakeholders through the process. And that's where things tend to kind of fall apart, because these are really complex projects that are taking place with a lot of sort of interdependencies that are driven by different stakeholders in the process. The issue is actually that I'm sure every contractor has their process and every architect has their process. The problem is those processes may not be great, and there's no consistency in the industry in how they do things. Just take something like putting a estimate together that goes into a bid. We see on the residential side, you could take 10 general contractors. They're all kind of doing different things when they're compiling those estimates, right? On the commercial side, that's not the case. There's a lot more standardization, and that's because there has to be, because those are clearly more complicated projects. But you also have project managers doing, the meta work in commercial. You don't have that in residential. So yeah, everyone has their own process, but the process may not be good, and there's no standardization, so there's no consistency in processes.